making it clear for you, the listener.
Yep. Think of this as your shortcut to getting the core of UX. So let's start with the basics based on these videos. UX design, user experience. What's the fundamental idea they put forward?
Right. So the sources lay it out pretty clearly. UX obviously stands for user experience. And design is, well, it's about planning. Planning how something looks, how it works.
Right.
So UX design, at its heart, is about deliberately planning how something looks and works, specifically to make the experience of using it, well, easy, effective, and ideally enjoyable for the person using it.
Easy, effective, enjoyable. Okay, so definitely more than just, making things look nice.
Oh, absolutely. It goes way beyond just the surface aesthetics.
The introduction videos seem to really hammer home a few key things that make for good UX design. What were those main points?
Yeah, it broke it down nicely. The sources pointed to, like, 4 core elements they see as essential. First, and this seems critical, it must meet the user's actual needs.
The fundamental reason they're using it.
Exactly. Like their example, if you're using an app to get food delivered, your core need is, well, getting food delivered on time. Good UX makes sure you can actually do that easily and reliably.
Seems obvious, but yeah, how often does that fail?
Right. Which leads straight to the second point. It has to be easy to use and easy to learn.
Intuitive.
Yeah, can you navigate that food app? Find what you want, add it, check out without pulling your hair out, and crucially, can you do it, even if it's your first time using it? It shouldn't feel like you need a manual.
That first time use is key. I bail on apps so fast if I can't figure them out.
I think most of us do. Third point, good UX gives the user a sense of control and freedom.
How so?
Can you easily change your mind? Edit your order before you hit submit, maybe cancel it if something comes up, reschedule. Users need to feel empowered, not kind of trapped by the interface.
Okay, so meet the need, make it easy, give control. And wasn't there like a bonus element, something extra?
There was. The fourth one they mentioned, sort of the icing on the cake, is that it should surprise and delight.
Ah, the delight factor.
This is that little extra something. Maybe a free voucher pops up, or the delivery person gives a really warm thank you, or just interaction that feels unexpectedly smooth and thoughtful. Something that adds a little positive spark.
So meet needs, easy, control, and maybe delight.
Got it. Why did the sources make such a big deal about this experience, though? Why does it matter so much, especially, say, for a business?
Well, what really came through in the sources is how directly they connect the quality of that experience to the success of whatever is being designed. The core idea is being truly user-centric.
Putting the user first.
Exactly. If you design something without really thinking about the user's needs, their context, their frustrations, it's probably not going to work very well. It might just fall flat.
Right.
But when you do prioritize that user experience, you end up creating things people genuinely find useful, things they want to use because they solve a problem effectively.
And the business benefit.
That's where the sources connect the dots very clearly. When users have a good experience, it's easy, it works, maybe it even delights them. They're way more likely to stick around.
They come back. They use it repeatedly. Maybe they even tell their friends about it. Positive word of mouth. For a business, that's gold. It drives loyalty, repeat usage, growth. It's not just fluff. It's actually a core business driver, according to these videos.
Okay, got it. So happy users equal a healthier business, essentially. That really centers the experience part. Let's make this more concrete. The sources use some really relatable examples of good and bad UX.
You did, yeah. Some good ones. For bad UX, the microwave example was spot on.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it. You go to someone else's house, you need to heat something up. You're faced with this alien machine.
Buddies everywhere.
Buttons, dials, maybe a weird touchscreen menu.
Yeah.
All you want is 30 seconds on high, but suddenly you feel like you need an engineering degree. That confusion, that frustration, that's bad UX. The design itself is getting in the way.
Yeah, been there. Feeling incompetent in front of an appliance. The sources also mention Don Norman and his famous Norman doors.
Ah, yes. Don Norman, he's like a founding father figure in UX mentioned in the source. And the Norman door is his classic illustration of bad design.
Explain that one.
It's simple but brilliant. It's a door, right? It has a handle which visually signals, pull me. But the door actually needs to be pushed open.
So you pull and nothing happens.
Exactly. You pull, it doesn't budge. You feel a bit foolish. Maybe you push in frustration. And Norman's point, which the sources emphasized, is it's not your fault. It's the design's fault.
Design failed to communicate.
Precisely. Good UX would look at how the door works and give the right signal. A flat plate usually means push. A handle means pull. That simple mismatch creates friction and confusion. It shows how, even with physical objects, bad design creates a poor user experience.
Such a perfect, simple example of design getting it wrong. So if that's bad UX, what did the sources offer as good UX?
The counterpoint they used was the toaster, but specifically a toaster with just a bit more button.
Oh, I know that button.
Right. We've all done it. Your toast pops up. It's not quite brown enough. What do? You push the lever down again, and guess how long? Maybe it burns.
No, this work.
That little, just a bit more button. It solves that specific user frustration perfectly. It anticipates your need, gives you precise control, removes the guesswork. It's a small thing, but it turns a potentially annoying moment into a smooth, satisfying one. That's the delight factor in action.
It really is. It's such a targeted solution to a common problem. Okay, so we understand the goal, good experience matters. We've seen examples. Now, who are the people behind this? What does a UX designer actually do all day?
Yeah, the second video really got into the weeds on this. It started by describing the type of person often drawn to UX.
Like personality traits.
Kinda, yeah.
Right.
They mentioned things like being naturally inquisitive, curious, really wanting to understand why people behave the way they do, being a problem solver, having a genuine desire to make things easier and better for others.
Sounds very human-focused.
Definitely. It's fundamentally a people-centric role. You're always thinking about the end user, the human on the other side of the screen or product.
And it's not something they do alone in a corner, right?
Absolutely not. The sources really stressed how collaborative it is. UX designers are constantly working with other people.
Like,
Pretty much everyone involved in creating something. Business folks, product managers, developers, engineers, visual designers, other researchers, and, crucially, talking directly with customers or users.
so they're like a bridge.
In many ways, yes. They act as that connection point between the user's needs and the goals of the business and the capabilities of the technology, translating needs and insights back and forth.
Okay, so they're collaborative, people-focused problem solvers. The sources also mentioned a kind of a typical process, like steps they follow. How do the day-to-day tasks fit into that framework?
Yes, the intro video outlined 5 core stages, kind of a fundamental UX process. And the What Designers Do video showed how their tasks map onto this. It generally starts with understand.
The research part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is all about digging in. A designer might be drafting research plans, creating scripts for interviews, actually conducting user interviews, talking to real people, face-to-face or remotely, and taking really detailed notes about what they're hearing, seeing, what frustrates people.
Getting that raw data.
Yeah, gathering insights. It requires empathy, good listening skills, trying to uncover those unmet needs or pain points.
Okay, understand first. Then what?
Then comes analyze. You've got all this information, interview notes, maybe survey results, recordings. Now you have to make sense of it.
Finding the patterns.
Right. This could involve looking at spreadsheets, using tools like affinity mapping to group similar comments, basically sifting through the data to identify trends, common issues, key insights. And a big part of this is then communicating those findings, creating reports or presentations to share what you learned with the wider team.
So understand the user, analyze the findings, then you start building stuff.
Not quite yet building the final thing, but you move into ideate. This is the brainstorming solution generating phase, but it's informed by that research.
Okay.
You might run workshops with designers, developers, product managers to come up with ideas. And a key activity here is creating wireframes.
Wireframes, like blueprints.
That's how the sources describe them, yeah. They're like skeletal sketches of an interface. They show the structure, the layout, where buttons and information go, how things function, but without the polished visual design. It's about mapping out simple, user-friendly ways to solve the problems you uncovered.
Conceptualizing the solution. Got it. But how do you know if these ideas are any good?
That's the next stage. Validate. You need to test your ideas quickly and cheaply, if possible.
How?
You might build prototypes. These can be simple, clickable versions of your wireframes or slightly more polished mock-ups. Then you put these prototypes in front of actual users.
Usability testing.
Exactly. You run usability testing sessions. You watch people try to use your prototype to complete tasks. You see where they struggle, where they get confused, what works well. You gather that direct feedback on your proposed solution.
Testing the hypothesis, basically, and after validating.
Well, the final stage is often called iterate. But the sources presented it less as a final step and more as part of a continuous cycle. Meaning, based on what you learned in validation, what worked, what didn't, you go back and refine your design. You iterate. Maybe you need to tweak the wireframes, ideate. Maybe you realize you need more information, understand. Maybe you need to reanalyze some data, analyze, and then you test again, validate.
So it's a loop. Understand, analyze, ideate, validate, and then iterate back through those steps.
Precisely. Good UX design is rarely a one-shot deal.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing process of learning, refining, improving, always circling back based on user feedback and data.
It sounds like communication must be constant throughout that loop.
Oh, absolutely critical. That collaboration piece is woven through everything. You're explaining research findings to stakeholders, you're presenting wireframes and prototypes to developers and product managers, you're justifying design decisions based on user needs.
Different audiences, too.
Yes. Technical teams, non-technical teams, business leaders. You need to be able to articulate the why behind your designs clearly and persuasively to everyone involved. You are, in many ways, the advocate for the user within the project team.
Okay, that really clarifies the process and the kinds of things they're doing. What about the skills, the personal attributes? What did the sources highlight as being really essential for someone in this role?
Beyond that curiosity and problem-solving drive we talked about, a few things came up repeatedly. Being a really good listener is huge.
Sure, the research phase, yeah.
And empathy. Truly trying to understand things from the user's perspective, even if it's different from your own. Having an open mind. The sources also mentioned being detail-oriented, understanding how all the little pieces fit together to create the overall experience.
Little details matter.
They really do. And interestingly, they made a point that while you obviously use specific tools and software, those can be learned. The core skills are more about that mindset, the empathy, the analysis, the problem solving.
So more about how you think and interact than just technical skills. Did the job ad examples add any more specific skills to that list?
They did, and it showed how the requirements can sometimes be framed in job postings. The Tesla ad, for example, specifically mentioned exceptional design skills and a great sense of aesthetics.
Suggesting a more visual element in that role.
Potentially, yes. While core UX isn't purely visual design, some roles clearly blend the two more heavily. Creative problem solving was a constant, of course. The ability to define and implement solutions also came up, which points to needing to translate insights into concrete, workable designs.
Not just finding problems, but solving them.
Exactly. And that need to build relationships and trust with stakeholders was everywhere. Collaboration again. The Gorillas ad also mentioned loving learning, being independent but also able to set up processes, and having a passion for tech.
And didn't one mention technical understanding? Carhartt, maybe?
Yes, that was an important one. The Carhartt example highlighted the need for an understanding of technical aspects for web design. The source explained this is crucial for working effectively with developers.
You need to speak their language, essentially.
Pretty much. You don't necessarily need to be a coder, but understanding the basics of how websites or apps are built, the constraints, the possibilities, allows you to design things that are actually feasible to build and helps you have more productive conversations with the engineering team. It's about being a good partner.
Makes total sense. You can't design in a vacuum.
Okay.
So using those job ads, Tesla, Gorillas, Carhartt, the sources showed the role isn't one size fits all. How do they illustrate those differences?
Yeah, this was really insightful. It showed the diversity within the UX designer title. Let's take the Tesla example first, the big corporation. That role seemed heavily focused on research, design, innovation, and prototyping new user experiences. There was a strong emphasis on those exceptional design skills. Creative problem solving, aesthetics, research strategy, sketching, prototyping. It felt geared towards pushing boundaries, perhaps in a more visually and functionally complex product environment.
Maybe more forward-looking R&D-ish.
Possibly, yeah. More focus on the idea and potentially more polished validate stages. Now contrast that with the small startup, Gorillas.
How is that different?
That role description sounded much more focused on rapid execution and intense collaboration. Gathering user requirements quickly, working hand in glove with product managers and engineers, conceptualizing ideas, fast sketches, prototypes, and then getting them in front of users for immediate feedback.
Testing constantly.
Right, directly with customers. It also mentioned that need for independence and setting up processes, which fits the startup vibe, and passion for tech, collaboration. It felt very hands-on, agile, team-focused.
Fast-paced user close. And then Carhartt, the mid-sized non-tech native company.
Right. Which was a great example because, as the source pointed out, pretty much every company needs UX now for their digital presence. Websites, apps, online stores, whatever.
Okay.
The Carhartt role seemed focused on working within existing teams, internal and external, to improve current features and develop new digital products. It specifically mentioned things like co-creating page and template designs for mobile and desktop, wireframing concept designs, but also creating sitemaps.
Sitemaps, like the overall structure.
Exactly. Diagrams showing how all the pages connect.
Mm.
And defining information hierarchies, how content is organized, like categories.
Mm.
And page flow structures, mapping out the steps the user takes to, say, buy something.
So much more focused on the underlying organization and flow of information.
It seemed that way, yeah. More detailed, maybe a bit more technical in terms of information architecture. The ad emphasized needing someone communicative, adaptive, hands-on, with digital UX experience, and again, that understanding of technical web aspects to work with developers.
Okay, so looking across those three, the big tech innovator, the fast startup, the established brand going digital, what's the main takeaway about UX roles?
The big takeaway really is that while the core DNA is the same, the user focus, the process stages like understand, analyze, ideate, validate, iterate, the key skills like empathy and collaboration, the emphasis can shift quite a bit.
Depending on the company's needs.
Exactly. One role might be heavily visual and future-focused. Another might be all about rapid testing and close teamwork. A third might dive deep into the structural logic of a complex website. The title UX designer covers a broader range of specializations and focuses than you might initially think.
Wow, okay. That pulls it all together really well. So we've gone from what even is UX to understanding it's about crafting effective, easy, enjoyable experiences.
Rooted in user needs.
Seeing how bad design like Norman Doors frustrates us, while good design like the Bitmore button delights us.
Yeah.
We walk through the designer's process, understand, analyze, ideate, validate, iterate.
And the skills they need? Empathy, listening, problem solving, collaboration, communication.
And finally, seeing how that role actually looks different depending on whether you're at a Tesla, a Gorillas, or a Carhartt.
Yeah, hopefully this deep dive using those Career Foundry sources has given you, our listener, a much clearer picture of what user experience design is all about.
And maybe why it matters even when you're just trying to use a microwave or navigate a website.
Absolutely. It impacts so much of our daily interaction with technology and even physical objects.
So thinking about those moments, the confusing interface, the perfectly simple tool, here's something to maybe chew on, building on what we heard.
Yeah.
Consider those Norman Doors or baffling microwaves in your own life. What seemingly simple things, an app you use, a process at work, even how your kitchen is organized, could actually be improved with a bit more thought about the user.
Applying UX thinking more broadly.
Yeah, how am I just asking, what does the user need here? Or how can I make this easier to understand or use, change how you approach things, whether it's a project, explaining something complex, or just setting up your smart home devices? Something to think about.